Good evening. Welcome to the 2026 election hustings for the Connétable of St Peter. I'm Kathy Keir and I'm taking us through the proceedings this evening. We have until 9 o'clock, so I hope you all have questions ready for the Connétable. Just a bit of housekeeping. Please make sure your phones are on silent. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if you hear one, please leave in an orderly fashion. Just to make you aware that the event is being live streamed to the vote.je YouTube account. So for those joining us online, welcome. There are live captions available. You just have to click the button at the bottom of your screen. So a recording will then be available for anyone on YouTube, so if you know anyone who couldn't make it tonight, they can watch later. So as you probably know, your candidate for Connétable is Richard Vibert. And as he's the only candidate, you also have the option to choose none of the candidates when you place your vote. This option is also known as none of the above. Tonight, Richard would like to say a few words about his manifesto, and then we'll open the floor to all your questions. So, over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all attending tonight. I was hoping that none of the above would be here tonight, but he hasn't turned up. I haven't seen him on my door-to-door visits either. However, I am standing for re-election as Constable of St Peter, having already served the parish for 8 years in this role. I'm unopposed, as you're aware, but it is important to note I will still face an election on June the 7th against none of the above. I intend to treat the election in the same way as if I was facing a physical candidate and give the parishioners the opportunity to express their views. I care deeply about the future of our parish and the people who live here. My aim is to help protect what makes our parish special, whilst also ensuring it continues to thrive and supports its residents. A key priority for the future is sensible development. Currently, 170 family homes are being developed, together with drainage infrastructure that will serve St Peter and the neighbouring parish of St One. This will ensure that the parish continues to thrive. However, any future development must now be carefully considered, and we must protect our remaining countryside, agricultural land and open spaces. A number of you will have faced disruption and noise during the period in which the government updates our drainage infrastructure, and I thank you for your understanding and patience. Many families face increased pressure with the rising costs of living in Jersey. Housing, childcare and everyday expenses have become increasingly difficult for many residents. I will continue to support those who find themselves in hardship during my next term. The parish and the church have joined together to find those families in need. As a result, at Christmas we supported a record number of families, and our work continues throughout this year. I want St Peter to be known as the parish where families are supported. A healthy parish community is one where families can live, work and grow. I would support government assistance to promote more locally grown food. The island was once proud of the diverse range of food it produced. Now most of our food is imported. Encouraging farmers to move to new crops would require grants and subsidies if we were to be competitive. But this would be a small price to pay compared to the high cost of foodstuff that families currently face. Traffic and road safety remain a concern in St Peter. The volume of traffic is significant. Our parish roads are central routes connecting the west. Added to this, speeding is an issue. I have been instrumental in reducing the speed limits on several of our roads, and our honorary police, after training of more officers, have increased the number of speed checks taking place. Speed limits are only effective if they can be enforced. It is also essential that traffic calming measures are introduced on our roads as part of the new developments, and I look forward to seeing the proposals from the traffic engineers and infrastructure, something we were promised at a parish assembly that was held some time ago. Sensible management of parish finances is essential. Parish rates allow us to provide essential services, repair roads and maintain our infrastructure. In the past, parish rates had been set at a very low level. There was a short-term benefit for those who paid rates during that period, but it was not sustainable as reserves were not built up to cover future expenditure. Just over 5 years ago, I was faced with having to borrow £250,000 to cover the cost of replacing our street lighting because no provision had been made to save for future expenditure. The alternative would have been a considerable one-off increase in parish rates, which would not have been acceptable. Modest increases in rates over several years have allowed us to make provisions for future expenditure, and this must continue. Negotiations have also been successful in reducing the interest burden on the remaining debt of approximately £2 million on a loan that was taken out prior to my time as constable. My involvement with children's services and my 2 years serving as children's minister have taught me about the complex issues that can result in antisocial behaviour and youth crime. St Peter experienced a period of such activity, and I'm pleased that working with various agencies, we were able to successfully resolve the issues. I'm certainly aware that we need more play or sporting facilities for teenage children, and I've started a project to look at how new facilities could be provided in the parish. I've also been asked how I combine the role of constable and that of a minister. I cannot deny that it has meant a significant effort on my part, but I will always ensure that my parish work is not neglected. 90% of the issues raised by parishioners are received by email, and many will involve contacting a government department to resolve. There is little doubt that having direct access as a minister to civil servants involved assists and speeds up the process, so there is a benefit to the parish if the constable has a role in government. However, the constable involved must be able to devote sufficient time to both roles. The alternative to taking up a place in government, if one is offered, is to serve on scrutiny or in one of the government committees where the workload would be similar, but there is no direct access to civil servants or ministers. I have also been working on several other projects. One is the refurbishment of our senior citizens accommodation, Maison Marcon, built 50 years ago to bring it up to modern standards so it can continue to offer an affordable home to people connected to the parish when they retire. Financing the project without a considerable increase in rates is an issue we must resolve. And when we have a clear plan, we will bring it to a parish assembly. Another project is to create a new room in the Youth and Community Centre for community use, such as mums and toddlers, playgroups, coffee morning, tea mornings, and meetings, etc. The room would be accessible to all, overcoming some of the issues we face when holding events in the parish hall. Finally, we are also looking with the church at the potential for some form of community hub, which could also act as a centre for the Western Food Bank. Again, one issue we face is how the finances will be raised. I will continue to serve my parish and the island to the best of my ability, providing support to all parishioners and helping to maintain that important community spirit within the parish and the island as a whole. I will now open the floor to questions and issues you wish to raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I hope what he said has raised some questions in your mind so that we can come to you to ask, for you to ask questions. I can't ask questions. I'm just here to moderate, so it really is over to you. When you put your hand up and you are about to ask a question, somebody will bring you a microphone so that we can hear you in the room and also online. I'll take one question from each person to begin with and then go back afterwards when everybody else has had their chance. So let's get started and hold your mic about this close, otherwise it doesn't work if it's down here. It only works if it's up here. So I think there were a couple of people over there who had some questions. Who wants to come first? Go on.
I don't think it's a particularly fair one, Richard, but what do you think you can do in the next term, if elected, to ensure that the constables stay relevant in the Assembly?
So I think we've got to look at some of the debates where we looked at whether the constable should remain in the states. I think trying to be a constable without access to government would very quickly lead to the demise of the constable. It's essential that you have those links to the government if you want to undertake parish projects. And more, of course, we work in conjunction with the government, on roads. We look at the drainage infrastructure that's going in at the moment. The parish has considerable involvement in the planning around that with the transport engineers. The other thing is, and we came to this, is whether the constables do have to play a relevant role. And as I said, that's either being part of the government, being on scrutiny, or one of the committees, such as the planning committee, which I remember you were on, Roland, or the Law Advisory Committee or PPC. So I think remaining relevant is ensuring that constables play their part in government. There was a view, the old view was that the constable could remain at the parish hall and literally wait for people to come in and see him, and that he didn't have to play a role in government. But I think that's certainly not the case now. I think it would be unfair on other states' members, and I think the current constables have very much dispelled that in that they either are in government, on scrutiny, or on the things such as the planning committee. So I think that's how to remain relevant, that you must play your active part in government.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Well, we'll come back to you if you want to ask something else. Does anybody else have any? Okay, well, microphone back to the gentleman there. And if anybody else has any comments about constables and the government, then put your hands up and I'll come back to you.
Richard, please don't take this as a personal criticism, but there's a general view that constables holding ministerial positions at the top table means that you can't do both jobs properly, and there are potential conflicts that can come to the fore. Now, I'm not suggesting that in your role, but there are other roles where that has been suggested. How would you respond to that?
Well, the first thing is that at the start of every Council of Ministers, there is a quest for conflict of interest. And I've got to say that it's probably, I don't think it's any more likely that a constable had a conflict of interest than some of the deputies who may have involvement in one way or another with the matters being discussed. So I don't see that if you're 100% honest and you come to the fore about any potential conflicts, I don't see that a problem. I have to say that I don't hold the view that you can't do both jobs, but you must be certain that you have the time to allocate to both of them. Now, I've been lucky in the last 2 years as minister, and prior to that as assistant minister, that I was able to devote that time. I can say that I never allow a parish matter to slide. I'm actively involved most of the time on parish issues of one another, even if I'm not in the parish hall. The fact is that 90% of it is on email now, and you don't get the people who drop into the parish hall. You'll get a few, but of course if you've got good procurers, and I look at one of my previous procurers who did an excellent job on the finances of the parish. I won't embarrass him any further, but he did an absolutely excellent job in helping us through a very, very tricky period. And if you've got the backing of your procurers, then I cannot see why you can't do both roles.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a gentleman here who had a different question. If we could have a microphone for him.
Thank you. My name's Alan Holmes, and I'm asking questions on behalf of someone else. It's like a gentleman called Graham Beasel. Graham is wheelchair bound, so he's unable to attend. He's got two questions. The first one is, and he's thought there's going to be more people here. I'll read it word for word. Are the candidates in support of removing the tax that is paid on the old age pensions? That's the first question.
Should we just answer one question at a time, because it's hard to remember two? Okay, tax on old age pensions.
Yeah, that's a. I mean, that is a very interesting one, and you know, there are many differing views on this. The tax on the old age pension, is it double taxation? Well, some will argue that you get far more out of your government tax than you put in the first place. So it's, in that view, you're only double taxed on the amount that you've put in. Others will argue that, you know, it's paid into a fund and therefore all of it was taxed at some stage, and therefore it shouldn't be taxed when it's paid out. If somebody was to put a compelling argument to me about and to prove the point that it is double taxation, then I'd certainly consider it. I think you'd have to apply it to all pensions, because if you only applied it to the government pension, it would be unfair if somebody's got a private pension and they paid tax on the money they put in, and they then got taxed on their pension. So it's bigger, I think, than just the government scheme. You'd have to look at all of them. I do sadly have to say that I do believe the Treasury Department are adamant in not supporting removing the tax. But there's a new government coming up, so let's see what happens.
Okay.
You want to say something about that issue? Okay, well, let's go to this lady first, and then we'll come back to you for your other question.
I may not be right, but I think if you're paying into a private pension, you get a tax allowance on that. So you actually haven't paid tax on that amount of money.
I think you're right. In some cases, that's correct, but there are some people who have been taxed on contributions. I think some people who are paying into some overseas funds have possibly found themselves taxed. But you are right that there is a tax allowance on contributions. But again, you'd have to, you would have to consider whether it's fair that one tax was, one pension became tax-free and another one didn't. Because I think the same thing applies. You would probably receive far more out of the fund than you'd put in the first place, because your employer would have put money in as well. But it's one to consider. That there are so many arguments here about, and everybody I think I've spoken to has a different view. So I could be convinced.
Okay, this gentleman, are you wanting to ask about tax or something else? Okay, well, let's let this gentleman ask the second question, and then we'll come to you.
Just round off on that first one. It's a fact that you do get some tax relief when you have a private pension.
Yep.
But when you start drawing down on that pension, you do pay tax on it, which is fair enough.
Yep.
Got no problem with that at all. Okay. Question number 2. Are the candidates in support of paying all carers a carer's allowance, regardless if they are old age pensioners or not? In other words, my understanding is you either have a pension or you have a carer's allowance, but you don't get both.
Yep, yes, and I think the Social Security Minister has actually explained this one a number of times, because you can choose either a carer's allowance or your old age pension, whichever is the larger. Well, certainly if you can choose, you might want the lesser amount. I don't know why, but I suppose somebody could choose the lesser amount. However, they are the carer's allowance was introduced for those people who are not earning a salary. So it would be unfair if you gave somebody the carer's allowance and the pension. You can't have both. And so I would not be in favour of changing the current rules.
Okay, well, let's see that I've just asked these
Yep.
questions on behalf of Graham.
And as I say, the Social Security Minister has gone to great lengths to explain why you can't get both.
Okay, thank you, Richard. There's a gentleman behind you there with the jacket who wanted to ask a different question.
Robert Surkoff. I'm a parishioner. I'm also chair of the Association of Jersey Charities. My question will relate to the charitable sector. We've seen mixed support from government towards charities, and I think quite a few charities feel they have not been recognised for what they achieve in the island and their importance. I wonder what your view is to that. The AJC has got a pledge for candidates to consider in terms of better communication and support with the charitable sector. So I wonder what your view is.
I think one thing you've said is spot on. Better communication, because the way in which some charities have suddenly found that they're receiving less from the government, and it hasn't been communicated well, and the reasoning why that's the case. I think a lot more work needs to be done to look at the charitable sector, because we place a great reliance on that sector, and they need to be recompensed for the work that they do for the government, and that needs to be done fairly. And I've taken up on behalf of several who have found their funding cut. I've been to some extent successful in some cases and not successful in others to get reinstatement of some of those funds. But I think that it's not appreciated just how much we rely on the charitable sector. And of course, I don't think I need to tell you that post-COVID, people are just not donating, and those large sums of money that used to be given to charities are no longer being made, those sort of donations. And so some of them are in urgent need of help. Yeah, I'm absolutely supportive of that sector.
Thank you, Richard. Gentleman here.
Good evening, Patrick Lynch from a charity, Caritas, and I thought it would be the time to follow Robert. A lot of the candidates, most of the 93 candidates overall in the election, make reference to cost of living. And indeed, you've talked about the work being done here in the Western Food Bank. Not many candidates have expressed how something can be done to deal with the cost of living. Now, you have applied and got accreditation for St. Peter as a living wage employer. One of the ways to reduce the food bank usage is for a living wage. And so a kind of twofold question. One, can I ask that you will commit to the next 4 years, if elected, for St. Peter to remain a living wage employer? And secondly, will you work with the other people in the States to advance the move of the minimum wage to parity with the living wage over the lifetime of this next assembly?
Right, okay. Absolutely, without a doubt, we will remain a living wage employer. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We've made the move and we would never go back on that, and I consider it very important. What I also think is important is, are we certain that the levels of, for instance, the old age pension and income support actually do provide a living amount for people to live on? Because no matter what anybody says to me, I think I'm not the only person who is aware that we have helped parishioners, and they are in real hardship. And if they're being paid the correct amount, how is it they're in hardship? How is it they can't pay their electricity bills? And how is it they're going to the food bank? We've got more and more people going to food banks. There's clearly something wrong in the system somewhere. And, you know, as a constable, I'm closer to that, I think, than, you know, other members of the States. I think the 12 constables are perhaps more aware of the the cost of, the problems with the cost of living. And so, no, you have my support there. There's no doubt about it. And I think there are failings in the system, and I think we have to, the next government has to look carefully at these payments and the level. But we will certainly continue with the living wage. And I am trying to convince my other constables to move in that direction. And I don't think I know people realise, but it's not just the parish itself, but it's your subcontractors as well. So you have to work with them for them to bring their employees onto the living wage as well. But it's something that everybody should be doing.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question. We'll go to this gentleman here and then the lady over there. Okay, so what's your question? Over here? We'll go to this person first. We haven't had anything from this side of the room yet.
Hello, my name is Peter Fancourt. I'm a parishioner. I want to change the narrative slightly. Talk about the parish rather than other issues we've been discussing, important as they are. State of neglect. Driving into the parish, it's a state of neglect. The co-op is a shambles, very bad design, nothing has been done with the arches, the whiteness, the two pubs, tipsy-toed, the things are falling off. It's just generally, I know it's not the constable's fault, it's probably the brewer's fault, Randall's, etc. But can something be done about this? Because you drive through our parish, compared to St Mary, it's beautiful. St Martin, beautiful. Why are we sort of looking, languishing? I know we've got roadworks going on at the moment, essential. But moving on from that, empty shops. The disastrous, Hefford's disastrous gone to the vape shop, now empty. There's a house down Route de la Presse, been empty for 40 years. Why isn't there some sort of law, island-wide, where you can tax the owners of these properties? Maybe they'll do something about it. I don't know whether the rest of you will agree. But there are empty houses that are sitting around doing nothing. But St. Peter has got its fair share of empty properties. So,
Should we start by answering one of those questions?
Sure.
The first one was, why are the pubs looking a bit messy?
Well, of course, they're privately owned. The parish has no... The parish can't force an owner to do anything to the property. And it is very much for the owners of those properties to keep them in good order. The same applies to the co-op. It's owned by the co-op. The way to do that is to go to the chief executive of the co-op and ask them to do something about the state of their shop. I've got to admit, it isn't a particularly beautiful building, unfortunately. I'm not quite sure what you can do with it to make it look any better. The Tipsy Toad, well, that's actually been in far worse condition some years ago. Yeah. It remained empty for many years, and there were literally pieces falling off it. So it has had work done over the years. We have to face that fewer and fewer people actually go to the pub now. So whether the brewery wish to spend money on it, but as constable, I can't force them to do so.
Can I interject
your next
there?
question was about empty shops, wasn't it? Should we just go through your first ones that you've asked first?
Okay, yes.
Is there anything you can do about empty
well, again,
shops?
it's an empty shop. The building's privately owned. They did have there was a vape and a milkshake shop, which I've got to say I wasn't in favour of, but because it was retail, there was absolutely nothing that could be done to stop them from operating that business. It was classed as retail. I looked into it. I remember being interviewed about it, but there was nothing that we can do about it. The whole building is currently for sale. It's been on the market for some time. I hope that a prospective buyer will make good use of it, but I think that one of the issues will be that it's almost certain that the retail part of it will have to remain retail and won't be allowed to have any other use.
So you're saying, Mr. Constable, that your hands are tied as regards that. You have no influence at all in any development that way.
We can be a consultee on a planning development, but somebody's privately owned building, there are no laws to make them do anything with, for instance, the shop frontage. As I say, the shop's empty at the moment. You also mentioned the house. We can move on to the house in Rue de la Presse, because that's actually been empty for at least 60 years, let alone 40. I'm aware of its history. The owners don't wish to do anything with it. And under Jersey law, they can't be forced to do anything with it. When the states were looking at empty properties, I actually came forward and gave them details of that house, because it was one of the empty properties that had been neglected for a long time. But, we're back to the fact that it's privately owned, and there are no laws in Jersey that make you do anything to a property.
But how can we improve the look of our parish, the village area?
Well, as I say, that we can't influence that. I would love actually for, when we have, for instance, Liberation Day, etc., wouldn't it be nice if the co-op building was actually, decorated and I've sort of hinted a number of times that perhaps, but nothing has ever actually been done. It would be nice to see that decorated. It'd be nice to see some flowers on it, but that's up to the owners to do that.
Okay.
What I can say is that I'm hoping that whole area will improve when the new development takes place, because there are plans to do work on it.
I could go on to where the children are going to go to school, but I won't.
Should we just move on to somebody else? Or do you want to answer this one first? Okay, and then we'll move on to the lady over here.
No, I will answer the one about the children going to school, because when those developments were first talked about, the very first thing that happened was a discussion with education, and I was there, and there is absolutely no issue with where the children will go to school. They have no problems with St. Peter's School, and even less now that there's a falling birth rate. There's no problem with capacity in this area for the children to go to school. There might be some adjustment of the boundaries for, Leylon, St. Mary, Lamoy, because some of our St. Peter's children already go to all those schools. I don't think St. Mary's is up to capacity. And so a small change to the boundaries might be necessary, possibly not at all. And so that was the very first discussion. And certainly for secondary school, there is no issue at all. And so I have to say that I'm happy about that.
Okay, thank you. There's a lady here who wants to ask a question.
Hello, good evening. My name is Fiona. I'm Jersey born and I've lived in the parish for nearly 6 years. I'm here to represent local families within our community, and we really want more play opportunities in our public spaces for our children. As Constable and in your capacity as current Minister for Children and Families, you mentioned in the quarterly meeting in January that you would like, quote, to see all schools opening their facilities outside of school hours. So I know you've touched on this in your opening speech, and my question is, where are you at with this, and what is happening with the development on our green space by the community centre? Thank you.
Right, so as regards schools, I'm very much in favour of schools opening up their facilities outside of school hours, and the Education Minister has a responsibility. We've talked about this, and some schools are already doing that. I understand from my door-to-door so far that that's not actually happening at St Peter's. So actually yesterday I agreed with one of the parishioners that I would take that forward because I was unaware that in fact if we are not sort of allowing any play at the school after school hours, when in fact the government is encouraging just the opposite. So, but I only actually discovered that because I went door to door, and in fact, David, Ben, you were with me yesterday, and that was something that came through, wasn't it? That there aren't the opportunities at the school to play after school. So, thank you for bringing that up. The green area, I have actually started work with somebody to look at having some facilities for the slightly older children, teenagers. The problem that arises with the green area, which most parishioners won't realise, is that we don't own that green area. It might seem surprising, but the upper part of it is owned by the church, and it was in fact passed as a graveyard some 50 years ago, but it hadn't been necessary to use it. That's the time's now approaching when actually the church would like that area back. And the other half of the green is owned by a private family who rent it to us at a very low rent. That's meant that over the years we haven't really done an awful lot with it because it's outside of our ownership. We knew at some point we might lose 50% of it. I've got to look at some of the other green areas in the parish. I have one in mind, and I had quite good feedback yesterday, again doing door to door, when I asked people whether they'd consider this area. Since the one at the parish hall may or may not be available in the long term, and one of the areas I've looked at is the very large green area at La Grande Pièce. That was originally destined for building on, and parishioners got together. I think it was in Constable Dufour's time, and a covenant was put on to prevent it from being built on. And that saved that area for actually children to play on and for people to use, because it was destined for more houses. The parish actually owned that, and it's quite a large area, and I think suitably placed a play area could be put there. There will be more crossings and more traffic safety measures once the new houses are in place, so it would be a safe area to get to. It would be very much a discussion with the residents in the area as well, whether they support it. The plan B is possibly to use the village green and do a land swap with the church for the section they own. The problem is that we don't own the bit of land that they want. So I'm in negotiation with the owners, who are Ports of Jersey, to see if they might release it and sell it to us. So sadly, all our some of it's more complicated than it should be. But what I can assure you is that in the next 4 years we will get a play area on one of those areas, and that we are already planning for that.
Okay, thank you, Richard. We have a question over there at the back.
Hi, Dominika. I'm new to the parish, and actually this is not something I wanted to speak about, but I want to tag along to Fiona's comments there. It would be great to have a lot more facilities for young families with children, but especially those that are working, because I know there is a lot of activities to do in certain parish halls and churches, but they're a lot of the time during working hours. So for families that are working, it's difficult to then have things to do with the children outside of those hours. So that's great to hear that things are already happening and it's already been looked at. So thank you for that. But one thing I wanted to raise is that in Jersey we have a great we are fortunate enough that we have the proximity to the people that are elected to the government. For example, I'm sure you know in the UK, one MP represents approximately 106,000 constituents, whereas in here the equivalent is equivalent representation is 2,000 constituents. And and sorry, please don't take this personally, but I'm just going back to the first gentleman's point, is that we held in Jersey the first candidates fair, and I was sorry to miss you for the evening session after the 6 o'clock. I was told you didn't return for the day. So my question is the conflicting priorities as a minister and constable that preventing you from fully committing to your role, or is it perhaps the fact that you're the only one standing, so that maybe you don't feel as you need to put as much effort in as the other candidates that perhaps have competition within the role that they're going for?
I think that I think that actually the only person that suffers really from the fact that I have two roles is myself and my family, because I actually put in very long hours pretty much every day, so I don't worry about the fact there's two roles, because every constable, no matter whether they're in government or not, has to carry out two roles. I think you were talking about the candidates, the candidates fair. Is that what you talked? Well, actually, the reason I couldn't be there at 6 o'clock, and actually some people didn't even turn up for the day session, is actually I had to return to do some parish business. So it wasn't a conflict of being minister and constable. It was simply I did have constable's duties that I had to get on with, and so that's why I couldn't return. So I was actually working.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody else got any questions? Hang on, there's somebody at the back there who hasn't asked one yet. I'll come to you after that, okay? The lady in the back row.
Hello. I've got a couple of questions, but they're both on health. One's very quick, I think, probably. Oh, sorry. As you know, we have the number 10 bus that takes us to Kennervay, to the Kennard Centre, which is good. But I don't know whether you're aware that it cannot get you there for the first appointment. If you have an early blood test, which you have to do early, you cannot get there, so you cannot use the bus there. And then, of course, it's only every 2 hours now, so it also means you potentially have quite a long wait for the next bus. But the important one is that you can't get to early appointments with it, which seems crazy. The other one is just, generally, I'd like to know what you think about the hospital situation at the moment, nothing to do with a new hospital, but the fact that there are very long waiting times and that we don't have specific consultants in specialised areas, and we don't seem to be able to get them. There's too many consultants expected to cover, for instance, on neurology, one consultant is meant to do all the aspects that come under neurology, whereas in the UK you'll get one for each different condition, and they specialise in that so that their expertise in that, whereas one cannot cover all the elements of it. But that's what we are trying to do over here.
Okay, so do you want to do the number 10 bus first?
Well, the number 10 bus, yes, I'm going to surprise you, I was aware. But we need to get the infrastructure manager and the bus company on board to extend the timetable. And I'm aware because my other half actually works at the Enid Kenno most of the time, so I've heard about it. So yes, I'm aware of that. Now the consultants issue, I wasn't aware of that, and I've got to say that probably health is not an area that I know, or the current hospital situation, not an area I know a great deal about. I suspect that, I can only presume that one of the reasons there are less people is because either they've had problem recruiting people, which seems to be an issue now. That there used to be a time when people wanted to come and work at our hospital, but that seems to be less of a case now, and that actually recruiting people is quite difficult. I can only presume that that's part of the problem. As I say, not necessarily my area, and not one that I've tried.
No, I know it's not your area, but it is something that in the manifestos nobody really speaks about properly. And I believe, I think, that the reason we're struggling to find consultants is because simply where we're asked to get trying from the UK or wherever, we don't have the sort of consultants that we're asking for over here. They are individually in different aspects. They specialise, so we cannot ask them to come over here and take on a whole department. Whereas perhaps we could join with hospitals in the UK and have people that come over for regular appointments and things like that, and just have one general that organises it all. Would make more sense.
I have to say, I think that's a fantastic idea. I know over in the Isle of Man they have a much closer relationship with one particular NHS trust, and I think do things along the lines that you're suggesting. And I think that's an excellent idea, and something that whoever is the next health minister should consider. I think a close relationship with another large hospital would benefit us.
Okay, thank you. There's a gentleman here who had another question.
You know what's coming.
Do I?
Remember your mic. Just put it near your mouth.
Oh, right, okay.
That's it.
I've tried for over 20 odd years to get a demerit point system brought into this island to tackle speeding and bad driving. I'm a qualified driving instructor, so I know what I'm talking about. We see speeding here in our village every single day, even walking down here tonight. And I thank the constable for extending the 20-mile-an-hour zone now out to Philadelphia Chapel. I'm very passionate about this, and I think I need to set the scene for people. I witnessed the death of my elder brother Robert 2 weeks past his 9th birthday, and I was 7 years old. Where Marks and Spencer's is now, there used to be a garage there. I won't go into the details of the accident. It wasn't the driver's fault. But I don't ever want to see another parent go through the pain. And for me, at 7 years old, trying to understand the loss of your elder brother. What's to be done? I don't know. But the constable and I were at the meeting in town. The only person who didn't have anything to say was the gentleman from infrastructure. Now, we've been assured that traffic calming measures will be brought in. We need a proper filter in turn. We've got one entrance going into this new development, one entrance to go in and out. And if we don't get that under control, there's going to be some serious accidents. And I know the constable's well aware of all this. Okay, that's all I've got to say.
So is your question, what can the constable do about it if he maintains his position?
Well, I think you were at the meeting where we're promised that they would come back to us with the traffic engineers with their work, but we haven't seen anything. So I will chase that up. It's election time, so of course we won't see anything till the new government's in place. But I'm with you on this in that we have to have proper traffic calming measures in that area. And I've asked a number of times for a crossing at Marks and Spencer. But the answer is always the same, that apparently a crossing has got to go from somewhere to somewhere. and therefore they can't. There's no position where you can put one. I think what they're really saying is that if we put one in, you would have to have some sort of some sort of area, or take a little section out of the trading estate, the frontage there, where you would have a safe area where you could, the crossing would end. Because I think at the Marks and Spencer end, that's not a problem. It would be at Marks and Spencer, that's fine, but you would have to have it. You would have to have some sort of refuge area on the other side. What I can't understand is that when they built some new houses there, the government acquired a small corner to put a bus stop on. Why didn't they, as part of that, acquire a strip along the whole of that where you could have put a pavement and then you could have had the crossing? I think it was very short-sighted what they did, and to have actually a bus shelter and bus up where there is no pavement. I actually think that in itself is dangerous, and I think that's exactly very, very close to where your brother sadly was killed. Yeah, so I think they had opportunities quite recently that they missed, where they could have improved the safety there, and it's sad that nobody did that.
So I guess what the gentleman is asking is there anything that you could do if you're constable again?
Well, I can keep asking or keep trying to get someone to put a crossing in there, because there's certainly enough, there's enough straight road to have a crossing. It's not a case you're coming round a blind corner. There is room there at Marks and Spencer, visibility, but they would need to acquire part of that frontage where the trading estate is. It wouldn't have to be very wide, enough to put a pavement and somewhere to cross to.
Well, it'd be useful if you did have the mic for people who might watch online.
You know that I've given you a document, 15 pages, I think, showing where crossings could be, where filter and turn could be, but that entrance to the new development, vehicles are going to come out of there. They're going to want to go towards St Wands, and unless there's a proper filter and turn, much the same as the bottom of Bowmore, out at Five Oaks, and it works.
Well, of course, the Bowmore filter in turn was put there by the parish, by our Constable W.P. Lamarca, who was told he couldn't have it, I believe, and went down there and painted it overnight with a couple of helpers. And that was the days when parishes really could do something. I think we've shared all your information with the infrastructure department. Yeah. And let's see if they take some of it up in those plans that come forward.
One last question. Whatever the infrastructure gentleman brings forward, will the parish have their say on that?
Well, what they call us as a consultee. Okay. So we can input, but we don't have any part of the decision making.
Until we go back to them and tell them it's not working.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about... there's somebody at the back there who has a question.
Hi, Richard. So this question is really relating more at an island level rather than a parish level, and obviously you balancing your both roles. And I'm just really interested in your views on this particular one. So we appear to have an ongoing of what many islanders deem to be or view as a wasteful culture of spending on many government-led projects with seeing very little results and seeing very little accountability. And I really just wondered what your views are on that going forward. Thank you.
I think waste is unacceptable, and I think if you're going to look at projects where we've put a lot of money in and as yet no result, you only have to mention the hospital. 8 years ago, when I first became constable, there was a scheme for that was going to cost us 423 million, I believe it was, and we were going to get the hospital. And sadly, at that stage, there were a number of politicians weren't happy with that, determined that they could do a better job. They went out, they visited various places, and by the end of the 4 years, I think we were looking at 600 million. And so they should have just listened to the experts, let them get on with it, and start the hospital at 423 million. And we'd have it now, we'd be using that hospital. Since then, we've spent another, I believe, 100 million. And as yet, there's not a spade in the ground, and there isn't a contract signed. I'm disappointed we reached this stage without a contract being signed. You know, it may still happen before the election, but I certainly believed up until recently that we would have a spade in the ground by the time the election came, and that hasn't happened. No, I don't believe in these projects. I think the main one is the hospital. I hope that Fort Regent doesn't turn into another one, but over the years there have been scheme after scheme for that one. This time I think we touch on the borrowing aspect here, where not only where we might waste money, but I believe we start by borrowing 43 million to start the job. So even worse, you could achieve nothing and have borrowed the money as well.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Gentleman at the back.
Hi, Richard. My question is in relation to the cost of living. As we know, Jersey is exceedingly high, a lot higher than the UK, and you being part of the Council of Ministers, can I ask if you're elected again on the Council of Ministers, what the government would do for mitigation and amelioration of the cost of living in Jersey?
I think this one has come up at every Hustings. And there I was hoping that it wouldn't come up this evening. So to address the cost of living, there's a number of aspects that we have to look at. I mean, we've got housing, we've got childcare, food costs, fuel costs. All of these are leading to a high cost of living. And not only is there a high cost of living, but that is also leading to people leaving the island. So it's not just school leavers not coming back. There are now people leaving the island because it's too expensive to live here. They can't buy a house. And so, number one, I think, is, for me, the first one we've got to tackle, and some people say it's housing, but I think it's actually food and fuel. I said in my opening speech that I would certainly support the government giving subsidies and grants to get farmers growing alternative crop. We've become a one-crop island where the only crop virtually being grown is the Jersey Royal. Now, up until a few years ago, we did have one farmer or one farming complex providing much of our fresh many of the fresh vegetables and produce. And I think we had to give them a subsidy to do that. That subsidy is a fraction of what people are now paying over the odds for food and essentials. And I think we need, it was very short-sighted to stop that subsidy and bring that to an end. So food for me is the first one to look at. Let's get local food produced. The other thing is you've got, for the food that has to be imported, you've got harbour dues on that, you've got freight costs. I think everybody has raised the fact, and I think there have been some negotiations, but there have been higher freight costs that have added several % onto the cost of food. I think for the major retailers, it's a very large amount. One of them actually shared to me, and I can't, for confidentiality reasons, I can't share what it was, but they told me what the move to an alternative freight provider or ferry service had cost them, and it is an enormous amount which they're having to absorb at the moment. But, you know, their head office is not going to stand for that forever. So, you know, there are probably more cost rises to come. So we have to tackle those issues on food. Housing. So what is an affordable house in Jersey? Well, house prices in Jersey now, I think, the average exceeds London prices. We used to say, well, we're not quite as expensive as London. Well, that's actually the reverse now. And people who perhaps, you know, both people in a couple are working, they cannot afford to get on the property ladder. We've got incentives for first-time buyers, but we actually need to extend that to other buyers as well. Because if you've had your first house, and you're going to move to, let's say you want a house with a garden, because you've got children, same number of bedrooms, but you want a garden. There's no incentives. You're not helped to get that property. What we're also doing is we've created a situation where we've had properties in the past, and it sounded good. First-time buyer in perpetuity. So it's always got to be sold to a first-time buyer. However, what's now coming onto the market and will apply to houses built in St. Peter here is that you can buy your house, or at least you can buy 70% of your house for 70% of the value. That's fine because you can get a brand new house. But unfortunately, the man who's got his house on an existing estate and has been told you have to sell it to a first-time buyer, he needs 100% for his house. So which one are you going to go and buy? You can get a brand new house for 70%, or you can get a 15-year-old house for 100% of its value. You're going to go for the one at 70%, and the others remain unsold. And I'm told there are already people trapped in that situation where they can't sell their houses because we are marketing cheaper houses, albeit you're buying part of the house. Nevertheless, you've got a property and you're on the property ladder. So we're creating some situations there that we have to resolve. So the high cost of housing, we could, for people buying houses, we could reintroduce mortgage relief to help them reduce the burden of the payments. For rental properties, we need to, there are controls coming in over rents. However, on the other side of that, we're seeing people leaving, we're seeing landlords leaving the market. So, you try to fix one thing, you create another problem, but nevertheless, we have to have affordable rents. And we also need to ensure that heating costs are minimised by ensuring that properties are properly insulated. So new properties are fine, but you've got existing rental properties. We need to work on insulation to bring the heating costs down for people. So all these things will help with the cost of living. But as you'll know, some of it is external, and we can't do anything about that. But what we can do is work on those factors where we are the cause of those increases and bring those under control. So I don't know if that's helped or yeah.
Okay, so the questioner is satisfied with that. There's a question again here.
Robert Serketh again. We're sitting in a very large community centre, speaking to people in some of the other parishes. Some of them are struggling with lack of youth facilities, youth clubs, etc. My understanding is we have a very active youth club here. I know we've got, as well for the community, the parish cafe. We've also got the preschool. Can you express your views on those facilities and how you would look to support them carrying on what you do now and carrying on, because I think it's important for our community.
Is that just for St Peter, or is that other parishes?
I'm aware that certain other constables and other parishes haven't really been proactively involved. I'd like to know what you're going to do to make sure that this facility here and the parish and the youth clubs, etc., carries on developing in the parish St Peter's.
Well, there's my support for the youth facilities in St Peter is absolutely solid, and as a parish, I will continue to do whatever to support them. I think we're unique, other than St Helier, in offering a preschool, and we're able to do that at what parents consider a very reasonable cost, and I wouldn't want to see any changes to that. I would continue to ensure, as you know from being a procurator, actually making a profit on the preschool and the cafe really has never been the intention. It's to provide a community service. Yes, we cover costs. Where necessary, of course, the parish will undertake the maintenance, and so while it might seem they make a profit, if you took into account the fact that there's no rent, and it fulfills a very good community purpose at a cost. And of course, we've got to thank the people that work in both of those, because we have some very dedicated staff who've worked for us for many years. And I think that's an indication of how the parish looks after people. The fact that certainly in both those roles, they could have gone off and got employment elsewhere, but they're happy with the way the parish supports things. So I would never fail to support the parish. I know that this building, for instance, is going to need some maintenance. And again, it comes back to that factor of we have to put money aside for these large maintenance projects. You unfortunately had only just become procurator when we were hit with the cost of the street lighting, which had never been, no money had been put aside, and no money had really been put aside for any major expenditure. So yes, I am absolutely solidly behind these facilities. I know that some parishes have, I think it's a strange thing in Jersey that rather than the government having provided facilities for the youth clubs and things, in the main, the parishes have provided for them and paid for them. And, the parishes have done exceedingly well in doing that. I think, I look at the play strategy, which I had handed on to me. We have a play strategy, but we have no money. So exactly how we move forward on that. And once again, I think within the play strategy, they're looking to the parishes to provide facilities. And I think that, they need a little bit of assistance from the government in doing that. So thank you very much for your question, Robert.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions? Oh, there's a lady here. I'll come to you afterwards. Oh.
My name is Jean Vibert, no relation to Richard. Just thought I would mention that. Just to say, I was born in St Peter's, never moved out of my parish. This is my home parish. I live on Rue de l'Église, the speed track of St Peter's, as Alan rightly stated before. I do feel that the traffic has slowed down coming from the co-op up Rue de l'Église, but coming from Jubilee End down, no. There's nothing, okay, you've got the 20 mile per hour speed limit sign, but I think the flashing sign at co-op end has reduced the speed. Could we not have one coming from, because if you think about it, they climb up Jubilee Hill and then suddenly it's all downhill. And the traffic, as I say, I live on that road, so I know what it's like. There's still children walking up and down that road, little ones pushing prams even, their dolls' prams. It's an accident waiting to happen, which I wouldn't like to witness. The pavement is very narrow. So if you've got a mum, I mean, I'm a grandmother, and I do push a pram up and down that road and on that pavement, and what I tend to do is cross the road, walk through the community centre green, and on the way back I walk through the churchyard, because that pavement on that main road is very, very narrow. If you meet somebody, somebody has to step off that pavement. And the other thing I would say is there's not enough lighting on that road. If you happen to be out at night, it's not going to the pubs, but if you've got something at the parish hall at night and you walk up that road in the dark, there's not sufficient street lighting.
So, of course, I don't need to tell you that it's not a parish road.
I know, but
we're not responsible for the lighting.
No, I can understand.
And the one thing that we have done is, of course, we've put the flashing signs up, or they're speed detection devices. You can get the speed of every car that's passed through there, although some of them are not working at the moment and I have to replace them. But so the only thing that has been done has actually been done by the parish. Again, we come back to this thing where we're consultees on these things, but we're not the decision maker. And I've spoken to them many times about the traffic on that road, but it remains just the same. I asked for big 20s to be painted on the road, and we couldn't have that. One lady in the parish actually offered to go out at night and paint them herself. And I think if it doesn't happen in this turn, she will actually go out and do that. And I think even that would have been, if we could have had those 20s painted at the Jubilee end and at each of the points where you start the 20-mile-an-hour limit and getting closer with the bus stop, it would have worked to some extent. Now, the good thing is the honorary police have been out in the last few weeks, and 2 more motorists were caught in that section of road this morning. So actively, we are doing what we can. I'll talk to them about the street lighting because it is quite poor, and luckily those ones, thankfully, are not our responsibility. Those are actually government ones. But
that I can understand, but I still think that our constable perhaps should try and see if we could have extra lighting on that road.
Oh, I can.
Because it's horrendous.
I don't mind doing that.
Lovely. Thank you.
I'm quite happy to take that forward.
Okay.
Don't come. If they don't do it though.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ooh, we've got a few over there. Hang on, wait for the mic, and then we'll come to you after that.
While we're talking about lights, could we also have a proper light put on the cut through from the main road into Liberty Peace, the one that goes alongside?
I know the one that comes out by St Peter's School.
Yes, the cut through.
The little pathway.
Yes, at night I don't use that because it's awful.
Dark, isn't it?
It's dark. Yes, yes.
Right, we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Now that one is ours.
Okay, so we might see a result there. The lady here with the white jumper. Oh, Roland first.
We had a conversation about it. Over the last year, there have been a number of independent surveys that come out quite clearly that the island says that 80% of the island say cost of living is the number one issue that they face today. And I think it's quite clear that it is becoming an election issue. I think you have to live on Mars if you haven't worked that one out. Thank you, Richard, for coming out with a long list of things that need to be done. But would you share with us, if re-elected, some of the things that you think you could do and the government could do to actually positively influence the cost of living for the many families in Jersey that are seriously suffering?
Yeah, I think things that I can do or that I can put forward as proposals. One of them is actually for those families that are struggling, who are on, income support and at that level. We need to actually look if that is actually sufficient, and the same for pensioners. I'm not convinced, from what I'm seeing as constable, that the level of those is sufficient for people to actually live. I think Patrick's nodding his head there. We're particularly seeing people can't afford the electricity bills. The winter, the number of people that have come forward, and I know you work particularly with one charity to pay those electricity bills, and you've taken actually some of the burden from the parish to help. But that shouldn't be happening if the pensions and income support were sufficient. There should be sufficient for electricity. And I strongly think that it's a choice between paying the electricity and paying for food. And that shouldn't be the case. So that's one thing that I do want to have looked at. We can't do much about the external factors, but I've covered some of the things that we can do. I think that harbour dues, for instance, we could look at removing those. I'm concerned about the freight costs, having heard from one of the major retailers what it's costing them. I certainly wasn't aware that the new arrangements would add to the cost of our food, but they certainly seem to have. That needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, I believe we signed a 20-year contract, so not quite sure how you renegotiate that now. What were the other things that locally produced food? I think we have to, an island that once prided itself on the food that it produced, vegetables, we don't grow anything now. Now, I say the government needs to subsidise it, and I think they do, because if you look at places like Lincolnshire that are major, producers in the UK, that area of England of vegetables and salad crops and that sort of thing, the farmers there, they might have a small workforce and they only buy in the labour for the hours that they need them. It's a very different system to Jersey. The costs are very different. Whereas here, a farmer has to have a permanent workforce all the time. And I think, David, you're nodding your head there, because it is a factor, isn't it? That the costs here of running what is a relatively small farm in UK terms are higher than they should be. And so I think subsidies are necessary if you're going to move away from that one crop of the Jersey Royal. So those are things that I think I can help with, or at least put proposals forward. I can't say I'd have to convince another 25 states members to vote for it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a supplementary, please?
A brief one.
You've talked about the two demographics that are well known, those on income support and obviously the pensioners. However, what would you say to what is coming up as a group of people known as the squeezed middle in Jersey at the moment? The young couples who are earning good salaries but are having nothing left at the end of the month and are not, I think they're described as surviving and not striving, who I think is the biggest issue that the island faces, that demographic.
It's something that I'm very aware of, that one of the critical groups is that group that is just above the income support level. I think we have to look at ways of, there seems to be a cliff edge where you either get income support or you get nothing. And so we have to look at a sliding scale that would cover some of that. And I think that's possibly one of the easiest ways of addressing it. If they're taxpayers, you can look at ways of and if they're, as I said, if they're taxpayers and they're paying a mortgage, you can look at relief on bringing back tax relief on mortgage payments. But I think that we have to somehow deal with that absolutely critical group that are just above the income support level. And those are the people that are also leaving the island. We have to help them.
Okay, let's move to the lady just in front with the white jumper.
You may recall that I spoke out at a planning decision meeting around the development that's planned to be built where the West Show used to take place. There's 2 developments currently in planning at the moment in St Peter's. One was for 35 houses passed on the island plan, yet 45 houses are being built on that development currently. The West Centre development was rejected at 65 houses and it was agreed at 130 houses. We've just had a number of people talk about first-time buyers, developments within the parish, and also around my previous question around children and families and open spaces and green spaces. So my question is just really about where your stance is on supporting that. Following on from your suggestion of being able to grow, we need the space, the garden spaces being built in these houses to enable families to have the space to grow vegetables in the first place. And also following on from that, I had a second question just to ask why it was that you voted against the first-time buyers review that was suggested by Alex Curtis in St Clements. Thank you.
Right, okay, so if we look at the houses being built in St Peter, those of us who couldn't, I think Roland was there for that island plan, some of those fields actually were not actually intended to come into the island plan, but as a result of other states' members sort of voting en bloc to prevent development in other parts of the island, the St Peter's fields came to the fore. And all of them got passed. The 65 houses were for a much smaller block of land. In fact, something like a third of what was actually passed in the island plan. So it was a different plan. And the reason it was rejected, the primary reason was because it had never been approved in the island plan. It wasn't really rejected because it was a housing scheme. It was rejected because it had not been passed in the island plan first. And the advice was basically to go forward, get it into the next island plan, and then build the houses. So the difference with these developments is that these are houses of 3 or 4 bedroom, and that's what is actually required. There are lots of 1 and 2 bedroom flats, but there are very few 3 and 4 bedroom houses available. Andium have virtually nothing on the rental market for families who need a 3 or 4 bedroom house, and these houses are actually vital. When they're completed, they will very quickly, the rental ones will very quickly be filled, and I believe the same will happen for those that are for sale, because there is a shortage in of that particular type of house. I can't, so there are the reasons for that development. I'm trying to think what the Alex Curtis first-time buyer proposition was now.
So I'm just going to summarise that so that people who are listening online or watching online understand.
Okay.
So it was like some research.
It was about research. I don't think that actually collating that information, my view was that I didn't think we were going to learn a great deal from that about previous schemes, particularly going back to the 1970s, when the conditions were very, very different to now. So I think that I do remember that it was based, I thought, on how valuable that would be as an exercise, how many people would be involved, the cost, and I didn't believe that it was particularly valuable information.
Okay, so do we have any other questions? Somebody at the back.
How would you increase frontline services offered by states departments without increasing their budgets?
Oh, that's a tough one. So when you say frontline services, what are you referring to?
Yeah, improve frontline services. Improve's probably better than increase.
Well, I think we can, if we don't want to increase costs, then we've got to use greater use of technology. Now we have the advantages of AI and, the changes that is making. What worries me a little is that, and we talk about AI, and there's no doubt that it can improve productivity, but what does worry me a little is that probably no more than 5 years ago, we were telling people to look at taking degrees in cybersecurity, and now those people already are finding that they can't get jobs because in the space of 5 years, AI has taken over and is actually doing the work that would have taken dozens of people in some cases, and it does it literally in seconds. And so I do worry a little bit about AI, but I think we have to look at greater use of technology.
Okay, thank you. I think there's another question from the lady next door.
Isn't it possibly the situation that in the island we are top heavy? We don't need to get rid of the lower down workers. We need to look at management. We seem to have more management, and that's what's costing the money rather than the frontline workers.
I think that is actually quite valid. I think there are areas where we can reduce levels of management. I think we need a proper review, though, because nobody's actually done that. And I think there are various departments where that's the case. We've seen quite a large increase in the state's employees. However, I'm not sure in a time when we're facing a cost of living crisis that we want to be removing people from their jobs. And I think you have to look at how you manage that sort of activity, because there's little point in removing people from jobs if they can't find another job. You would then actually be creating a situation where you'd be putting them on social security payments, and I would never want to do that. So any sort of job cuts would have to be carefully managed and done in a way that is not going to cause another crisis somewhere.
I think we need the mic over there.
Well, that's a theory, yes, but you would then have to, if there were jobs there, yes, that's the case. But if you would still have to find employment for the people that you had removed from their jobs, and as I say, you could easily create another crisis somewhere. So you have to be very careful how you undertake that work. I'm not saying you don't do it. And of course, yes, you would then have funds to, particularly I think in the hospital, you would have funds to pay for more nurses and more staff on the front line. But we already strangely had the situation where we had too few consultants. So, you cannot start doing ad hoc changes without some sort of proper review that tells you where are those jobs that can be cut.
Wait, can you wait for the mic?
The lack of consultants and needing consultants is not the same as administrative staff. Where we in certain departments, they are reducing the workers on the front line, but they are not reducing the managers. They're probably increasing the managers.
Well, I don't think reducing staff on the front line is a good thing.
But it's in the paper, isn't it, that they are doing that and they're saving money by doing that.
Well, that's the wrong area to be doing that. But as I say, you do still need some sort of review to see where you can, and that is a result of not doing that work to establish where is it that those extra costs are, and what sort of management levels can you actually strip out. Of course, the other thing is that every time that you have redundancies, you then have quite heavy costs in paying people redundancy for leaving those roles, particularly if they've been there a long time. So you have to factor all these things in. So I say proper review, somebody undertakes that, then we can take some action.
Okay, any more questions? Any more from over here? Yes, gentleman over there.
Good evening, Connétable. Just quickly, in your current term of office, as a minister and as the constable, could you give us 2 achievements or 2 highlights for you during your current term of office, as 2 as minister and 2 as Connétable?
Oh. That's 4. That's 4. So, right. Okay. As minister, I would say 2 achievements. One is the legislation that has given same-sex couples and people who've adopted the same legal rights to have for the children beyond birth certificates, and we've removed that the term, in effect, illegitimacy completely. And I think that was a major achievement. So I'm proud that I brought that legislation to the States. I think another major achievement is finally, and you'll be pleased about this, is to have a St Helier youth centre on which we've actually started work. There are hundreds and hundreds of children in that area of St Helier and across St Helier where there are no facilities at all. And although there's been a lot of talk about, a youth centre in that area, it's never happened. So I'm really pleased that, again, I was the minister that put that into action. I have to say, I have a very good assistant minister, and I asked him to work solely on that initially. And it actually didn't take that long to find the site. And I'm very pleased that we've actually started work on it. So that would be the 2 ministerial ones. From a parish perspective, I think, although because there's an NDA, I can't say a great deal about it, but I think one of the main the achievements has been that we've reduced the financing costs of the parish. We'd been paying excessive amount of interest as a result of an agreement that was taken on long before I was constable. But I have the man here who did all the negotiations, and again, sadly, Robert, you can't speak about it, can you? But we're in a lot better position than we were, and we saw that for the first time in the accounts last year. The other one, I think, is an overall achievement that I was very pleased to see last year, that we were voted the happiest parish to be in. And I think that's come from, looking after the parish. I have to say that, we've got some fantastic staff, and I'm very proud of the staff and try to look after them. And they work across the various parts in this building and in the parish hall. And, you know, we've also got the two chaps who are working on the roads and various other maintenance. And you know, everybody does a fantastic job. And I'm very pleased that that was actually recognised as the happiest parish to live in.
Okay, any other questions? We do have until 9 o'clock, but if we run out of questions, we can end it. Oh no, we've got somebody over there. Nice and close to your mouth.
What's your view on recreational cannabis?
Recreational cannabis. Well, I do have some concerns on recreational cannabis. I'm not particularly in favour of prosecutions of particularly young people for small amounts of cannabis. So as a centenaire, we had quite a bit of leeway, and I was quite lenient in that regard. And on more than one occasion went to the Attorney General to actually ensure that people didn't get prosecuted in certain instances where I didn't think it was going to be in their long-term benefit to prosecute them. The use of recreational cannabis is a difficult one, because we're now seeing people coming into the mental health service who are suffering the effects of recreational cannabis. And of course, in a number of cases, they're actually getting it as medicinal cannabis, which raises the question. I voted for medicinal cannabis because I was told it was going to help people in pain. But it now seems to have become much more widely available. And I'm told that something like 30% of the people admitted to adult mental health services with psychosis is as a direct result of having taken, I think it's medicinal cannabis. So I have some concerns about its recreational use. I have a slightly different view on prosecution. And that's really my position.
Okay, any other questions? Any from over here? We've had lots more from this side. No?
No? Well, I think you've been a fantastic audience.
Are you
Thank you very much. You've kept me. I was worried whether I'd be able to answer the questions or not, but it's been a good session. You're welcome to contact me at the Parish Hall if you think of any other questions. But thank you very much.
Can I just say one more thing? You're thanking us for being here. I'd like to say thank you, because I know that you are available and you can be seen. All you have to do is ask, and that's good enough for me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, because I think it answers the question of whether you can be minister and constable. And doing both roles is actually quite helpful to the parish.
Okay, let's wrap up then. Thank you for the questions, and thank you to Richard for his answers. And if you'd like, as Richard said, you can get in touch with him here. And any of your deputy and senator candidates, you can find their contact details on the vote.je website. And the manifesto booklets have started to be delivered, so some of you should have received them by now, and all their contact details are there. If you applied for a postal vote, your ballot papers need to be with the judicial graph by 12 noon on Sunday the 7th of June. You can vote early at St Paul's Centre in St Helier from the 26th of May to the 1st of June, so that's an option. And on election day, polling stations are open from 8 till 8. So please do remember to take photo ID with you. Thank you very much for coming, and good night. Are you wanting to say something else, Richard?
I was going to thank you. Thank you very much for coming along this evening.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.